Well, I thank the gentleman from Missouri for taking the lead on this and having the privilege to join with you here on the floor and say a few words. I'd take that $825 billion and I'd add to that the number which I believe is $347 billion, which are our interest costs as we calculate here over the next 10 years. And it takes this cost to $1.1 trillion plus another more than $1.1 trillion. And as I look at this, and I've heard some of the gentleman's remarks, I would just submit this question that I only can come to one conclusion when I ask it, and that is, what is the most colossal mistake the United States Congress has made in the history of America? And how would we measure that? Have they passed a policy that sent us down a path that we couldn't get back from? Have we declared an unjust war? Have we spent so much money or created so many government programs that there is no way to ever set up the politics to repeal them again, nor is there a way for a free market economy to ever fund them? And has it done so much to diminish the independent spirit of the American people that they slow down or cease to produce? And I can come to only one answer on that. The most colossal mistake in the history of Congress that I can come up with in a quick inspection of my recollection of history is this mistake made today. This very idea that we can spend money and we can spend our children and grandchildren's money, and for all we know, our great and great-great-great-grandchildren's money. There is no prospect of ever getting out of this debt. And the proponents of this, as it's described, stimulus plan, neither will they predict a result that will come if they follow through on the spending that's designed. We know that a minimal amount of this money will be spent in this fiscal year or this calendar year. I think the number is 12%. It's a coincidental number, and I remember it because there were some of FDR's programs that, of the millions that were invested there during the New Deal, only 12% made their way actually to the ground into projects, and the balance of that, the balance of the 88% was just sucked up and drained out for the cost of government administration and inefficiencies that come. I mean, one of the theories that I think has some validity to it, and I subscribe to it and almost totally, and that is that if the private sector doesn't do it, chances are it's not a viable economic model. So how can government come along and take an unviable economic model and prop it up with the fruits of someone's productive labor, because that's what taxes are. They're the fruits of someone's productive labor, and drain them off and take them away from the producer and put them into government programs that have already been demonstrated not to work. And they can't describe for me an historic model of this Keynesian approach of being able to stimulate an economy by massive government spending and show me the results. And the most obvious one is the Great Depression.
Of course, the Great Depression, you took a recession and turned it into a Great Depression, and it just kept going and going and going, because what they're doing is they're vacuum cleaning all of the money out of the economy for federal jobs programs, supposedly creating jobs, and starving the very productive sector of the economy that could be solving the problem.
And as an engineer, you understand this analytically. If you were the gentleman from Missouri, were necessarily a trained economist, you might just understand it esoterically. For me, I understand it from the perspective of one who has started a business with no capital, a negative net worth. For 28 years, I ground my way through establishing a business in a free market economy, and I made my living off of low bid in the construction business. We know what it's like to compete. But government doesn't seem to understand this, and when we look back at the track record of the New Deal in the 30s, and I represent the state from which Herbert Hoover originated, and he was a brilliant man, and I'll defend him on a lot of fronts. But his success, I think, at some point gave him a level of overconfidence where he started us down a path of Smoot-Hawley, trade protection, tax increases, and the barriers to free market that set the stage for FDR to be elected in almost the same scenario as President Obama was elected in an economic crisis situation. And then we see almost the same scenario with President Obama as we have seen with FDR, create and grow huge government programs under the belief that there's going to be a solution there. And I would challenge this administration now. Maybe in the 30s FDR didn't have the model. He couldn't look back on the Great Depression and see where somebody else really went wrong. But I would challenge this administration to point to this Great Depression and show me where the New Deal actually did anything to help our economy recover. I'll say that can't be proven, even by the Keynesian economists, even by those people that voted for this classic boondoggle
it seems
today.
like if you allow me to
back.
just reclaim my yield back for just a minute, it seems that we have quite a number of different historic models to look at now where the Keynesian approach of big government spending has fallen on its face. It was not just the Great Depression. It was also Japan.
Indeed.
And if you really want to say that, you could also quote America right now, because we have spent way more money than we should have spent, and yet our economy is not so strong. So if the theory is spend a whole lot of money you don't have, it should have worked by now, because we've been practicing that more than I wish we had as a Republican conservative. And so there are models, and yet the other hand, there are models showing that what you're saying, productivity of the businessman in America, is what really works. It happened that productivity of businessmen in Ireland really worked very well. You could almost contrast Ireland and Japan using the two different approaches. And as you know, gentlemen, you've had the responsibility of meeting payroll and running a small business, the discipline that's required to do that, and you also have the satisfaction of seeing a worthwhile product that is added to the market and is there for some period of time because of the fact that you've enriched Americans through the work of your business.
If the gentleman would yield.
I do yield.
The last visit I made to take a look at the economics in Ireland, they informed me that there were 560 American companies that were domiciled to do business in Ireland. Many of them were attracted there by a 10-year suspension of corporate income tax, which the EU found to be a little bit too difficult to compete against. And so they used leverage and took it up to, I believe the number is 13.5%. But still, many foreign companies migrated, took their business and set their operations up in Ireland because of a favorable tax scenario.
If you yield, gentlemen, are you saying that originally Ireland was going to get rid of all income taxes on corporations to encourage them to locate there and to work their free enterprise magic there, if you would? Is that what you're saying?
The gentleman yielding.
Yes, I do yield.
That the policy in Ireland some years ago, as I recall it, was that they would suspend income tax on a company that would move to Ireland for a period of 10 years, get them established, and in order to attract them. And it worked very well. And it turned something around that Ireland's greatest export 25 years ago were its young, well-educated people. They would raise their children, send them off to school and college, many of them with graduate degrees. Then they'd go across the rest of the world to ply their trade because the economy in Ireland was a shrinking economy. And they came together, and business and labor understood that you have to have profitable corporations, or otherwise there won't be jobs for the skilled employees or the blue collars. So they came together in an agreement, both of the unions and business, to propose this policy, which then was leveraged into I'll call it a flat corporate tax by the EU's leverage that they used. Yield back.
Well, it's just a treat to have you here and to bring that free enterprise perspective that you have. And there's something that just seems kind of amazing to me in a way, that the irony in a way of the fact that this whole problem with the economy that we're dealing with, even now and for the last couple of years, is a result of people that were liberal Democrats unwilling to regulate Freddie and Fannie. And that's recorded right on the old New York Times. The president says, you've got to get these wild and woolly loans under control. They said, we're not going to do it. And boy, it hit the fan. And it seems to me there's an ironic twist that this quote that I put up earlier, the current chairman of the Financial Services Committee, who is now tasked with getting us out of this problem, there's a certain irony in the fact that this is a guy that makes the quote, these two entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, are not facing any kind of financial crisis, said Representative Barney Frank of Massachusetts, the ranking Democrat on the Financial Services Committee. It seems ironic to me that he makes that statement the whole top blows off everything, and now he's in charge of fixing this thing. The thing that concerns me is the way he's going to fix it's going to make it worse. And what we've done here is we've spent today more money than we spent in Afghanistan and Iraq over the last 6 and 7 years, and we did it hardly with a blink of an eye.
Gentleman would yield?
Yes, I do yield.
I think, gentlemen, and looking at the poster there of September 11th, 2003, the second anniversary, actually the second anniversary of the attack on the United States, and then 2 years later, in a few days, October 26, 2005, Congressman Jim Leach offered an amendment on the floor on a financial services bill that would have required Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to undergo the same kind of capitalization requirements of other lending institutions and the same kind of regulatory requirements of other lending institutions. And the same individual, the chairman of the Financial Services Committee here today, came to the floor and right over here challenged that amendment and argued that no one was saying that Fannie and Freddie were in trouble, that they needed to be regulated, that there was a problem with their liquidity, that this was simply an attack on Fannie and Freddie, and was successful in his debate. That amendment failed. And so you know that there have been several efforts in this Congress to try to bring Fannie and Freddie under a regulatory guideline by Republicans, fought off consistently by Democrats in this House of Representatives. Now, yield back.
And so now